Thank you. Welcome. Let me, first of all, recognize the presence of Honorable Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State of the United States Government, members of the United States delegation, and members of Congress. The two arms of government there, so I have to be very careful. So I need to recognize the members of Congress separately and distinctly from the executive branch. Welcome, all of you. It is my pleasure on behalf of the fellow heads of government to welcome you. We are pleased that you have chosen this occasion of CARICOM's celebration of a Golden Jubilee to meet with us. And it is coincidental that the United States of America celebrates its birthday at the same time with CARICOM. So one can see the true spirit of family which exists between us. Mr. Secretary, the United States is one of our longest and most enduring partners. And the community attaches great value to the strong relationship characterized by a spirit of cooperation and underpinned by common democratic values, geographic proximity, people-to-people contact, and collaboration on a number of issues of mutual importance. When we met Vice President Harris last month in Nassau, the Bahamas, we reiterated the importance of this relationship and the several opportunities to deepen and strengthen our engagement in such key areas of trade and investment, security, health, energy, disaster management, and climate change. We are pleased with the resumption of high-level interaction with the United States since the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles last year. And your presence is a strong signal that the United States has kept its commitment to maintain this level of interaction. You're not quite yet at the level of the Reagan era, but you're getting there. CARICOM is intent on working jointly with our partners to address our priorities in the short, medium, and long term, as evidenced by our joint efforts to address some of the region's most pressing challenges, including energy security, food security, and development financing. We welcome the support received from the United States for the Bridgetown Initiative, and we look forward to advancing the recent discussions at the Paris Summit and working with the United States of America and the G7 in particular, and other developing country partners alike to achieve the desired outcomes. We live in the same neighborhood, and there's one lesson that we can learn from COVID-19 and the gun crimes wreaking havoc on our societies is that we have shared problems. However, while there have been discussions and we have seen and appreciate the increased advocacy on some of our most pressing concerns, we are still faced with numerous challenges which impede regional development. Blacklisting, correspondent banking, and access to concessional financing based on vulnerability are still a long way from resolution. We need to see some movement in these areas if we are to realize the required results. The community is appreciative of the US-Caribbean partnership to address the climate crisis, a framework aimed at stimulating fresh commitments to climate adaptation and resilience and clean energy program across the Caribbean. This is an excellent framework which can be beneficial to Caribbean countries in our efforts to further strengthen and deepen our renewable energies as we combat the existential threat of climate change. We look forward to the USA's advocacy and support of our positions at COP28 later this year in the United Arab Emirates, and its commitment to be a significant contributor to the Loss and Damage Fund and play its part in helping to achieve the US $1 billion per year agreed upon at Paris in 2015 to help our countries combat that very serious threat. Mr. Secretary, the government and people of Haiti continue to face daunting circumstances as the crisis in our sister nation worsens. CARICOM remains steadfast in supporting Haitian-led resolutions or solutions to the complex issues impeding the country's development. Joint efforts with our international partners are essential to the achievement of this goal. And there's no secret, Mr. Secretary, that the United States will have to play a very crucial role in assisting in formulating, along with the Haitian people in CARICOM, a solution to the challenges confronting our brothers and sisters in Haiti. Haiti needs us. No doubt Haiti needs us, especially at this very crucial juncture in their history. And so in this regard, I express on behalf of the community appreciation to the government of the United States for its efforts in the pursuit of a lasting solution to the situation in Haiti. I am confident that our deliberations today will further enhance the very strong CARICOM-United States partnership and help to advance and enrich our long-standing relations. I want to say to you, Mr. Secretary, do not believe for once that this Caribbean community is not a true and dear friend of the United States of America and its people. We may disagree, as is always the case, but we recognize you as a very strong friend of the Caribbean community. Now, let me take this opportunity to recognize the separate arm of government of the United States, or their friends from the Congress. Congressman Jeffries, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome you and your delegation to Trinidad and Tobago for this historic occasion as we celebrate the community's 50th anniversary. The CARICOM community values highly the relationship our region has enjoyed with the United States this past 50 years. And we place a premium on our positive relationships nurtured and sustained with the United States Congress, in particular, the Congressional Black Caucus. Indeed, just last month in the United States was the celebration of Caribbean Heritage Month. And we have not forgotten the significant efforts expended by the Black Caucus before President George W. Bush proclaimed the first Caribbean Heritage Month in 2006. We owe a great debt to some of your contemporaries and predecessors, including Congressman Mix, who is here with us today. A distinguished gentleman. Thank you very much, Congressman Mix. And our dear Caribbean sister, Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, and friends like Maxine Walters and Sheila Jackson Lee, who continue to look out for the Caribbean in the halls of Congress. They have really been true champions for the Caribbean, and we recognize their enduring efforts for us. We welcome the opportunity of your visit, which serves to strengthen our mutual desire to continue working closely to find solutions for the issues of great significance to the Caribbean, which will come before Congress. I speak more specifically to, one, the political and humanitarian crisis in Haiti. Two, the challenges posed by the loss of correspondent banking, which continues to be a priority for the region. Three, the dire issues of climate change, which for many of our member states has become one of survival. And four, the growing small arms trade, which is infiltrating our small societies. We look forward to your support for the requisite legislation necessary to address the threats posed to our financial systems and ability to trade by the loss of correspondent banking. We continue to count on your support in the Congress to reinforce our efforts to address this and other challenges which stand to affect the region's sustained development and prosperity. My colleagues and I look forward to the discussions on these and other issues in our deliberations today. I first wish to invite His Excellency, the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, to address us, and then we shall ask Congressman Jeffries to follow suit. Secretary of State, please.
Thank you very, very much. Prime Minister Skerritt, CARICOM Chair, Prime Minister Rowley, Secretary General Barnett, all of our esteemed colleagues here today, all of our friends. It is an honor to be with you to celebrate CARICOM's 50th anniversary. If you go back to 4th of July in 1973, when CARICOM's initial members signed its founding treaty, the then Prime Minister of Jamaica, Michael Manley, said this: "We must seek our strength in our unity, and then we must dedicate that strength to the building of a new life of opportunity and security for our people." I think that's a very powerful mission statement that CARICOM has now carried on for 50 years. Prime Minister Manley was speaking about CARICOM, yet his words also describe perfectly today's partnership between CARICOM and the United States, a fellow Caribbean nation. Unity starts with listening. This is why we've engaged intensely with leaders across the region to hear the issues that matter most to your citizens. I was with President Biden and Vice President Harris when they heard directly from our Caribbean friends at the Summit of the Americas. We've heard you since then in the joint action committees that we created on climate, on energy security, on food security, on access to finance. And we hear you every day through our diplomatic posts throughout the region. And I think what we've heard underscored that to solve some of the biggest challenges facing our people, we simply have to work together and work together more effectively in genuine partnership. And I know that our Congress shares that view. That's why this extraordinary delegation from Congress is here at the same time, led by our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, to demonstrate America's support for deepening our longstanding ties across the region. And that includes strengthening our cooperation at the regional and also at the international level. In no area is this more evident than your leadership, everyone around this table, in actually rallying the world to address the climate crisis and to strengthen energy security for all of us. We know that most of the communities being hardest hit by climate change have done the least to contribute to it. We recognize that as the world's second biggest emitter and the number one emitter historically, currently the second biggest emitter, we have a unique responsibility in the United States to address this problem. So let me share briefly what we're doing on that score in our efforts to meet our responsibility. First, we've been working relentlessly to avoid a climate catastrophe. President Biden returned to the United States to the Paris Agreement. One of the very first things he did when he took office, he enhanced our national pledges, and he's dedicating unprecedented resources to meet the targets through the Inflation Reduction Act. This is by far, as I think you all know, the largest commitment to tackling the climate crisis in the history by any country, anywhere. Each of the countries in the G7 has actually adopted plans that, if implemented, and that's an important if, will actually help keep global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We need other major economies outside of the G7 to do the same. Your partnership, your leadership in pressing the biggest emitters to make the necessary commitments and then holding us to those commitments, that is indispensable. And we really deeply value the work that you're doing on that score. Second, we're working to build greater resilience and adaptation to climate change while accelerating the region's transition to clean energy. This is the driving focus between the partnership we established, the U.S. Caribbean Partnership to Address the Climate Crisis 2030, a program that we launched last year to try to make energy systems cleaner, more resilient, more affordable, like geothermal projects in Dominican, St. Kitts and Nevis, solar microgrids in St. Lucia, electric vehicles in Barbados and Jamaica and Suriname, just to name a few examples. With the additional $20 million that Vice President Harris announced in climate funding just last month in Bahamas, we'll continue to build together on those efforts. We're working to strengthen disaster preparedness, as you alluded to, and response, improving early warning systems, developing risk maps that predict the areas that are most likely to be hit by storms, helping countries develop new tools to adapt to emerging challenges, as we did, for example, at the Caribbean Water Conference that was co-hosted with Barbados just a few weeks ago. Third, we are working to expand access to international finance. This is something we heard so powerfully from a number of you, both in Los Angeles and in other meetings. We've heard loud and clear that the scale and disproportionate impact of the climate crisis demands a new approach. We agree. A year ago, Treasury Secretary Yellen and I committed to work with CARICOM to make tangible progress toward the goal, not simply to recognize the problem, but to actually do something about it. We said that we would press financial institutions to allow countries to defer debt payments in the event of climate shocks and natural disasters. At our urging, the World Bank agreed to offer debt deferment clauses in their loans by 2025. We've made a similar commitment in the United States. We're urging other lenders to step up with us. And we also know that with new leadership at the World Bank, this is an intense focus for that institution. We said we'd expand assistance to help governments manage the financial risk of disasters. At the recent Global Financing Summit in Paris, the World Bank rolled out a disaster risk toolkit that would do just that. We're also supporting the IMF's new Resilience and Sustainability Trust, which is offering concessional financing, loans issued below the market rate, to Barbados and to Jamaica. We're pushing for access to similar financing to countries in the region that are experiencing climate shocks. But we are far from finished. We have a lot more to do on this front. Among other reforms, we need to create financing to help countries caught in another middle income trap that you all know very well. Those not developed enough to qualify for membership in groups like the G20, and yet too developed to qualify for aid from institutions like the World Bank. These investments are not just necessary to protect against threats, they are once in a generation opportunity to create good paying jobs in communities across the region. We profoundly see not just the imperative of acting on the threat, but also the opportunity that's involved. They're just one of the ways that we're partnering with you to expand inclusive economic opportunity. And this ranges in scale from microloans to entrepreneurs, to macro financing for infrastructure. The United States remains the Caribbean's biggest trading partner, something we're very proud of. And for decades, our Congress has given preferential trading status to key industries in countries throughout the region. We're also working to advance other regional and global priorities, from championing our shared commitment to democracy and the rule of law, to supporting free and fair elections in Venezuela through the Mexico City process, to transforming our region's approach to mass migration and displacement, to addressing, as you emphasized, the ongoing crisis in Haiti. And just to say a few words about that. The United States shares the commitment felt throughout the region to help Haitian people shape their future, to restore the country's democratic order through free and fair elections. Haitians cannot achieve these critical goals without security. That's why we've been and remain the largest donor to Haiti's national police, why we support the Haitian government's call for a multinational force to help its police restore security. Lots that we can talk about, and I know we'll talk about over the next day on that front, but this is an area of intense focus for us, and we're determined with you to do everything we can to help the Haitian people get it right. The United States is also committed to partnering with you to address growing food insecurity across the region. This is, of course, intensified dramatically in recent years, a combination of climate change, of COVID, of conflict, including Russia's aggression against Ukraine. According to a recent UN report, one in two people in the Caribbean cannot afford a healthy diet. In response, the United States continues to provide emergency food assistance to parts of the region where people are experiencing acute hunger and malnutrition. Just since February of last year, we've contributed an additional $13.5 billion to fight hunger around the world. We remain the World Food Programme's largest donor, providing more than 50% of its budget. But at the same time, one of the things I've heard very clearly from talking to so many of our partners is a desire to be able to grow sufficient food to provide for your own people. We're bringing to bear our expertise from across the entire government to help achieve that goal, from the Department of Agriculture to the Environmental Protection Agency, to USAID. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we'll dedicate an additional nearly $5.5 billion to help small farmers in the Caribbean boost productivity, increase access to technology and markets, and adopt climate smart practices. We're also working together to address another priority that you shared, and that is to stem the rising tide of violent crime, taking a devastating toll on communities across the region, especially, we know, young people, hurting local business, undercutting foreign investment, eroding the trust of citizens in their governments. Last July, Congress passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. This included new federal provisions that increase criminal penalties to up to 15 years in jail for traffickers and straw purchasers. This is a tool that's vital for holding accountable those who smuggle U.S. arms to the Caribbean. We supported the creation of CARICOM's new Crime Gun Intelligence Unit, which is improving information sharing among our law enforcement agencies and strengthening the capacity of countries to investigate gun-related crimes. Just last month, we created a new position at the Department of Justice to deepen collaboration among us on gun prosecutions. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Michael Ben-Ari, a very experienced DOJ prosecutor, will serve as the United States' very first coordinator for Caribbean firearms prosecutions. A half century ago, when Caribbean nations came together to create this organization, you made the deliberate decision to call it a community. And it's a word that recognizes that to fulfill people's hopes, meet their needs, countries across the region have to work together, and every member has to do their part. I think that's never been more true than it is today, not only for CARICOM members, but also for the United States. We know that our fates are intertwined. We know that to deliver for our people, as Prime Minister Manley said so many years ago, we have to find even more strength in our unity. And the reason that I'm here, the reason that my colleagues are here today on this very powerful occasion is to tell you, to share with you that you can count on America being by your side as a neighbor, as a partner, as a friend. And as together, we work to genuinely build unity and forge the future of our community, this community that we share, and do it together. So thank you so much for having us here today. We're grateful to be part of this truly historic occasion. Thank you.
Let me recognize Congressman Jeffries, please.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for your very kind and generous introduction, for your welcome. It's an honor and a privilege to be here at this gathering of CARICOM heads of government. This is my second international trip as House Democratic leader, but my first in the Western Hemisphere, and it's an honor to touch down in the Caribbean. I want to first acknowledge all the CARICOM heads of government and dignitaries who are here today, including the Secretary General. Thank you for your leadership of this incredibly important multilateral organization. Secretary of State Blinken, thank you for your phenomenal representation of the Biden-Harris administration on the global stage and all that you are doing to strengthen the relationship between the United States and the Caribbean region. Since January, I've had the opportunity of serving as House Democratic leader in Congress. Over the last 5+ terms, I represent the 8th Congressional District in Brooklyn, proudly home to one of the largest Caribbean American communities in the nation. Indeed, on any given weekend back at home, particularly during the summer months, you can hear calypso, soca, reggae, or dance hall, and think that you are on an island nation. I want to introduce the U.S. congressional delegation that's joining me here today, a distinguished group of members of the House of Representatives, Representative Radewagen of American Samoa, a leading Republican voice on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and someone very familiar with the challenges that face island nations. Representative Gregory Meeks, who of course needs no introduction, the top Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and a leader in strengthening the relationship between the United States and the Caribbean. Representative Horsford of Nevada, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and a House leader with Trinidadian roots. Representative Yvette Clarke of New York, the first vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, a fellow Brooklynite and a powerful member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and of course, someone who proudly hails from the island nation of Jamaica. Representative Joyce Beatty of Ohio, the immediate past chair of the Congressional Black Caucus and a leader on the Financial Services Committee, particularly on issues related to international financial institutions and sovereign debt. And Representative Castro of Texas, the top Democrat on the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee and former chair of the influential Congressional Hispanic Caucus. The members of the delegation are all leaders who are committed to a strong partnership with CARICOM. Thank you to Prime Minister Rowley for hosting us here in Trinidad and Tobago. What an honor and a privilege to join you on this 50th anniversary celebration of CARICOM. This is a historic moment as we celebrate the founding treaty signed here 50 years ago and renew a commitment to being the best possible neighbors to each other. The region is stronger because of multilateral partnerships like the one forged by CARICOM 5 decades ago. And our collective future will be brighter because of the continued relationships that bind this organization together. Our trip to CARICOM builds on the historic Summit of the Americas hosted by President Biden and Vice President Harris in Los Angeles, and on efforts by Vice President Harris to engage with leaders of CARICOM throughout the Caribbean over the past year, most recently in the Bahamas. Let me reiterate on behalf of our congressional delegation, our unshakable commitment to the financial health, security, and economic well-being of the Caribbean region. We are here to make clear that the CARICOM nations are not an afterthought. We value this relationship. We are neighbors. We have shared democratic values. We have mutual security concerns. We have common economic interests, and we are stronger together. On the issue of Haiti, we're committed to working together to decisively address the security, economic, and humanitarian crisis that exists in a manner that credibly and authentically is guided by the Haitian people. In addition to dealing with the crisis in Haiti, let me just briefly touch on 3 areas: economic growth and development, regional security and public safety, and energy and the climate crisis. As a congressional delegation, we are determined to make sure Caribbean nations have access to the capital that you need to grow and prosper. We want to help facilitate the continued development of a thriving market-based economy. And we want to help you address the sovereign debt issues that serve as a constraint to investment in a manner that is fair and equitable. To further support the region in both the 2022 and 2023 fiscal years, Congress appropriated over $80 million for the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative and an additional tens of millions for new initiatives to promote inclusive economic growth, strengthen resilience to natural disasters, and for the Caribbean Energy Initiative. And we look forward to doing more. It's also important that we focus on your very real security concerns and enhance public safety in the region. Indeed, public safety is a prerequisite to prosperity. In that regard, we are committed to enhancing cooperation and information sharing between our respective law enforcement agencies, including through the crime gun intelligence units that was mentioned by the Secretary. We must disrupt the gun trafficking and violent crime plaguing the region by stopping the shipments of arms and holding gun traffickers accountable to the full extent of the law. This includes building on historic legislation passed by the United States Congress and signed into law by President Biden last year, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, that for the first time in American history makes straw purchasing and gun trafficking federal crimes. This legislative tool will help us help you deal with the rising tide of gun violence many of your nations unfortunately confront. Lastly, we want to make sure that the energy needs of the Caribbean are met in a manner that is both reliable and sustainable. At the same time, our country is of course committed to addressing the climate crisis with the fierce urgency of now. We began that process, the passage of the historic Inflation Reduction Act, the largest effort that any country has ever undertaken to combat the climate crisis in the history of the world. But we know that more must be done. In that regard, a key pillar of our collective effort will be the U.S.-Caribbean Partnership to Address the Climate Crisis 2030, the Biden-Harris administration launched last year. The United States and other developed nations have disproportionately contributed to greenhouse gas emissions and the rise of extreme weather events and the climate crisis throughout the world. We recognize that it is our responsibility to be a big part of the solution. Thank you for extending this invitation to our congressional delegation. We look forward to a comprehensive, clear-eyed, and candid discussion of the issues we collectively confront. A lot has been accomplished by CARICOM over the past 50 years, but we know there is still a lot of work to do for the benefit of our shared neighborhood in the Western Hemisphere. Together, I am confident that through our ongoing cooperation and collaboration, that the best is yet to come. Congratulations on your 50th anniversary celebration.
Thank you very much to the Secretary of State. And as they would say, thanks to the gentleman from New York. I think we would ask the media to excuse themselves and so that we can continue the conversation.